and strength, about rebuilding a life from the ruins, and about learning that true happiness comes not from holding on, but from learning to let go and love again. Emily stood in front of the bedroom door, holding a light blue shirt, James's favorite. She carefully smoothed out each fold, her eyes filled with tenderness. He was about to leave on a 5-day business trip, the longest since they got married, and the first time he'd be away from home for so long. Emily would have to manage everything in the house on her own. "Don't forget your coat," she reminded him gently while packing his suitcase. "It gets chilly in the evenings in the Lake District." James just mumbled, eyes still fixed on his phone, a hint of impatience on his face. But Emily didn't mind. For her, simply looking after her husband like this was a quiet joy. She was used to taking care of everything, used to tending to their home with her own 2 hands. The day before James's departure, Emily woke earlier than usual. She bustled about the kitchen preparing breakfast and even cooked a pot of plain porridge, just in case he didn't like the hotel food. The morning meal was simple but warm. Emily served James a slice of omelette and softly reminded him, "Make sure to eat properly. Don't overwork yourself. Stay warm. And don't stay up too late." James just smiled and patted her head absent-mindedly, a gesture of habit. He didn't say much, only replied half-heartedly, "Yeah, I know." Emily had no idea that behind his rushed attitude lay a carefully arranged plan. Trusting her husband was something she had never once questioned. After breakfast, Emily personally double-checked his luggage one last time, clothes, flu medicine, phone charger, even a little notebook where she'd written down a list of good, local restaurants he might enjoy. She also tucked a few packets of his favorite biscuits into a corner of the suitcase, hoping he'd be pleasantly surprised when he found them. Just before leaving for the airport, Emily rushed to the local market to buy some fresh fruit for him to take along. While James was getting dressed, she busied herself tidying the house, doing laundry, making sure everything would be spotless and fragrant. When he came home just the way he liked it, seeing his petite wife working so tirelessly for him, James hesitated for a moment, but immediately the image of Lily, his young, attractive lover with her sparkling eyes and sweet, playful smile flashed in his mind, pushing aside any guilt. When the taxi arrived, Emily followed James out, fastening his backpack carefully and pressing a small note into his hand. "These are the numbers of some people I know up in the Lake District. If you need help, just give them a ring." James glanced at the paper and stuffed it into his pocket with a nonchalant nod. As the taxi started to pull away, Emily called out one last time, "Call me when you get there, okay?" "I'll be worried." James nodded, offering a reassuring smile. "I will. Take care of yourself while I'm not around." The car disappeared down the end of the street. Emily stood there, waving, her eyes blurry whether from the sun or swelling emotion. She couldn't tell. All she knew was that inside her, a deep emptiness had formed, a silent yearning that lodged itself in her chest before it could become words. While James was away, Emily barely had a moment to sit down. She brought their child to school, went to work, rushed home to cook, clean, and help with homework. Each night, she waited by the phone, hoping to hear James's voice. But every evening he messaged her the same line, "Busy with meetings. Get some rest, love." She read and reread those brief texts, her heart still warm. She told herself that her husband was working hard for their future, and she needed to be understanding, supportive. At night, after tidying everything up, Emily would sit alone at the dining table, quickly eating a bowl of cold rice, glancing at her phone now and then as if waiting for something. When their child fell ill with a fever one night, she cradled them in her arms, gently soothing them while secretly wiping away her anxious tears. Still, she refused to call James, worried it would distract him from his important work. To Emily, family was sacred. She believed that with enough patience and love, they could weather any storm. She had no idea that far away, the husband she loved so dearly was spending sweet, carefree days with another woman, free from responsibility, worrying, or guilt about the small family waiting for him back home. The taxi carrying James pulled up to the departures terminal at Heathrow Airport. Lily was already waiting, wearing a short dress and oversized sunglasses that nearly covered half her face. The moment she saw him, she ran over, linking arms with him and beaming. "Let's go, darling. I've been looking forward to this 4 days," she chirped, voice full of excitement. James pulled his suitcase behind him, wrapping his other arm around Lily's waist, moving like a newlywed couple. The early flight took them straight to the Lake District, a quiet, romantic getaway where they could play their roles freely, without shame or pretense. At the hotel, they checked into a double room without a second thought. The spacious room, with pristine white sheets and a balcony overlooking the deep green hills of the Lake District, made Lily leap onto the bed with joy, sprawling as if it were her own haven. James chuckled, walked over, kissed her forehead and whispered, "It's just you and me here. No rules, no one to judge." Lily chirped away about their plans: a morning walk through flower gardens, lunch with the region's specialties, and a romantic evening stroll through the local night market. Hand in hand like true lovers, James nodded indulgently to her every whim, his heart brimming with a liberating sense of freedom, a feeling he never experienced with Emily. On their first day, they rented a scooter and roamed the hills. Lily clung tightly to James' back, laughing heartily in the wind. They snapped dozens of photos, hands intertwined, lips brushing, without a hint of hesitation. That night, they sipped wine on the balcony, gazing at the misty lights of the countryside, murmuring sweet nothings. Meanwhile, in another world, Emily sat alone at the child's study table. Her phone lay silent beside her, no messages, no calls. She was multitasking, helping her older child revise lessons, cooking plain porridge for the younger one with a fever, and tidying up their cluttered home. Sweat dotted her forehead, but her heart was focused only on one thought. Had James eaten yet? Did he remember his coat? When the younger child's fever spiked late at night, Emily panicked and rushed him to the hospital. Alone, she waited in the cold hallway. The harsh fluorescent lighting only highlighted her dark eye circles and worn expression. She quietly typed a message to James. "Our son has a high fever. I've taken him to the hospital. Please call me when you're free." The message was sent, but no reply came. At that very moment, James and Lily were drunk on both wine and passion. Lily slipped off her dress, curled into James' arms and murmured, "Let's stay like this forever. I don't want to return to that boring life." James nodded dreamily. In that foolish moment, he forgot entirely that far away, a wife was carrying the weight of the family, awaiting even a single word from him. The next morning, just as dawn broke, James and Lily ventured into the countryside to pick strawberries. They giggled, fed each other berries, and uploaded playful photos with ambiguous captions, a getaway of love. No one knew that behind James' cheerful smile was the coldest betrayal. Back home, Emily had been up since 5 a.m., hastily preparing breakfast and packing, up for the child's follow-up appointment. Despite her fatigue, she forced a smile to encourage the kids. Deep inside, she clung to the hope of even a short comforting message from James. But the silence continued. That evening, she hand-washed clothes, hung them out to dry, then sat alone at the table with a bowl of cold noodles. She still set a chair for James, a habit, though she knew he wouldn't return that night. Her eyes grew heavy, yet she told herself, "When he comes back, I'll tell him everything, about the fever, about holding it all together. He'll understand and love me more." What she didn't know was that during her hardest days, her husband was holding another woman's hand, enjoying the sweetness Emily never got to taste. That night, she cradled her child to sleep, one hand stroking his hair, the other gripping her phone like a lifeline. In her fitful dreams, she thought she heard James calling her name, but she woke to the cold wind whistling through the window. At the same time, in the Lake District, James and Lily curled under warm blankets, whispering empty promises. Two worlds, one woman sincere and devoted, the other frivolous and false. Yet the man chose to abandon the one who loved him most for a fleeting illusion. 3 days passed without a single call from James. At first, Emily convinced herself he was busy, but with each day, a gnawing sense of dread grew. One late night, after the children had fallen asleep, Emily sat alone on the sofa, scrolling through her phone absent-mindedly. A message came in. "Mum, do you know your husband is on a holiday with his mistress? If you don't believe me, look at this." Her hands trembled, heart pounding violently. She hesitated, then opened the attached image. Her world crumbled. There was James, holding the waist of a young, beautiful woman in a strawberry field, their smiles radiant, like a newlywed couple on honeymoon. It felt like a slap to the face. Another photo followed. Them walking hand in hand through the night market, dining by the lake. The tender gaze James gave the other woman. He hadn't looked at Emily that way in years. Waves of emotions crashed in. Shock, pain, shame, fury, but most of all, despair. She clutched her phone, tears streaming endlessly, body trembling uncontrollably. Memories of sleepless nights, caring for her feverish children, unanswered texts, all cut like knives through her heart. "So while my children and I battled illness and loneliness, you were out there happy with someone else," she sobbed. Just then, the phone rang. It was her mother-in-law. Emily quickly wiped her tears and composed herself. "Hello, Mum." On the other end, panic. "Emily, your father has had a stroke. He's in critical care at county hospital. Come quickly." It was as if a second blade pierced her already shattered heart. Her frail, aging father, the one she always promised to take care of, was now hanging between life and death. Meanwhile, her husband had abandoned everything to run off with his mistress. Emily couldn't hold back the tears. She quickly bundled her child, grabbed their coats, and rushed out to catch a taxi home, heart heavy with pain and fear. That night, in the quiet of a countryside taxi, slicing through dark fields, Emily held her child close, staring blankly out the window. Memories reeled like a slow-motion film. Their wedding, when James promised to protect her, to never let her cry. Her pregnancy, when he'd biked miles under the scorching sun, just to get her a cool drink. Now she was racing to the hospital, alone, with a sick child in her arms, while James lay peacefully beside someone else. The final words trembled, but were resolute. Outside, the rain began to fall, each drop pattering like a farewell to a foolish past. Yet inside Emily's heart, the storm had passed, leaving behind a shattered soul, but also the beginning of a new journey, to stand on her own again. The days after her father's funeral, Emily was like a ghost. She quietly packed away his photos, cared for her elderly mother, and looked after her two young children. Busy as a machine without feelings, every morning when she opened her eyes, the pain surged like an undertow, losing her father, losing her husband, and losing her faith in happiness all at once. But when she heard her children's innocent calls, "Mum," she knew she couldn't fall apart. No one would care for her if she didn't first care for herself. One afternoon, while her children slept soundly, Emily sat on the front porch, the pale sunlight stretched at her feet. She held an old wedding photo and slowly set it aflame. The small fire curled around the edges, burning away painful memories. The flames flickered out gently in the breeze, light and empty like her heart now, hollow but cleansed. "I must start again for the children, for Mum, and for myself," she whispered. The next day, Emily decided to move back to the city with her children. She resigned from her old job, the same company where James had worked to avoid gossip. Without any formal qualifications or connections, she accepted all sorts of manual jobs, selling items online, cleaning houses by the hour, and taking on home-based piecework. Every day she seized every moment, waking early to take the children to school, working tirelessly through the day, then staying up late fulfilling orders to send to customers. Many nights, while folding clothes, she heard her children crying for her to hold them. Silent tears rolled down Emily's cheeks, but she wiped them away and gritted her teeth to endure. Every penny she earned was carefully recorded. She didn't dare buy new clothes or treat herself. Everything was saved for school fees, milk, and an emergency fund for illness. Poverty clung to her, but her hope never ran dry. One evening, while packing orders, her oldest daughter hesitated and asked, "Mum, why hasn't Daddy come home anymore?" Emily paused. The long-suppressed pain surged again, but she forced a smile and stroked her daughter's hair. "Daddy is working far away, But you still have Mum here, right? The little girl hugged her tightly and nodded. Emily felt that small warmth in her heart, and vowed she must become a rock for her children, no matter what. Time passed, and Emily's wounds slowly began to heal. She enrolled in an online accounting course in the evenings, studying whenever her children were asleep. She knew that manual labor alone would keep her in poverty. Only knowledge could change her life. At first, studying was difficult. Years of busy family life had dulled her mind. But Emily didn't give up. Every night, she struggled through assignments, diligently took notes, and persevered little by little. On some nights, the soft light of the desk lamp revealed Emily's weary face, but her eyes still shimmered with determination. 2 years later, she had earned her accounting certificate. She secured an administrative job at a small company. The pay wasn't high, but it was far more stable than before. Now, each morning, Emily confidently buttoned up her shirt, held her children's hands, and stepped out of their small flat with pride. She was no longer a woman dependent on others. She had rebuilt her life from shattered pieces. One day, while shopping at the supermarket, Emily unexpectedly saw Lily. Lily stood at the checkout counter, disheveled, cradling a tiny child in her arms, her face pale and drawn. Emily stopped instinctively. Lily also saw her. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Lily's gaze showed a flicker of embarrassment, before she turned quickly and walked away, child in tow. Through a few old friends, Emily learned that after James left her for Lily, he took Lily to live with him in the countryside. But their life was far from idyllic. Not long after, James's business failed, leaving him deep in debt. Lily had to take on odd jobs to survive, while James sank into drinking and hopelessness. The news reached Emily like a cold breeze, a reminder that nothing built on deceit could last. She felt no joy, no sense of triumph, only a strange calm. Perhaps forgiving others is also a way of forgiving oneself. One beautiful morning, as Emily and her children were eating breakfast outside their rented home, James appeared. He looked gaunt, his face hollow, eyes sunken like a lost soul. In his hand was a tiny bag with a few cheap toys for the kids. He stood awkwardly in front of Emily and spoke with a trembling voice. "I'm sorry, I was so wrong. I missed the kids terribly." Emily looked at him, her heart still. She had shed all the tears she needed to, endured all the pain she had to. Gently, she pulled her children close and smiled calmly. "We're fine. We don't need your pity." James stood frozen, his hands trembling in the air. Emily turned away, held her children's hands tightly, and walked off into the bright sunlight. Each step felt firm, a resolute departure from a painful past, toward a brighter future. In her heart, there was only boundless love for her children and a powerful belief, "I deserve happiness." Since the day James appeared and disappeared like the wind, nothing much had changed in Emily's life. Mornings still rushed by with school drop-offs, afternoons with tireless work, and late nights with study sessions to improve her skills. But something inside her had shifted. A strange sense of peace had awakened. She no longer clung to the past, nor did she blame life. Each passing day, she lived fully in the simplicity of the present, her children's laughter, modest meals filled with warmth. One Sunday morning, while reading a book in the park, her children played on the slide. Emily unexpectedly ran into Daniel. Daniel was the director of an accounting firm Emily had worked with on a few small projects. He was a few years older, composed, and always had a gentle, kind look in his eyes. That day, Daniel approached her first. "Out with the kids too. You look different today, full of energy." Emily laughed. "Maybe because it's the first relaxing Sunday morning I've had in a while." They sat on a nearby bench, chatting casually. Before long, the conversation deepened about family, the past, and old wounds. As Emily shared her story, Daniel didn't show even a hint of pity, only quiet admiration. He said softly, "I used to think the strongest woman I knew was my mother. Now I know there's one more." Emily blushed, her cheeks glowing in the sunlight. It had been a long time since her heart had fluttered like that. From that day on, Daniel began visiting her and the children from time to time, never flashy or overbearing. Sometimes he'd pick the kids up from school when it rained heavily. Other times, He'd invite them for ice cream in the park on quiet weekend evenings. Daniel had experienced loss himself. His wife had passed away early, leaving him to raise a child alone. Perhaps that's why he deeply understood Emily's hardships and loneliness. At first, Emily kept her distance. Old wounds made her cautious of any new relationship, but Daniel's sincerity and patience slowly melted the ice around her heart. One day, after nearly 2 years of knowing each other, Daniel finally spoke up. "Emily, if you'd allow me, I'd like to help raise your children with you. I can't promise riches, but I promise a home filled with love." Emily was silent for a long time, emotions welling up, all swirling like a flood. She looked at her children, playing joyfully beside Daniel, their faces lit with laughter. For the first time in years, Emily felt she could trust someone completely. She smiled and nodded gently. No more words were needed. Daniel took her hand, the small hand that had weathered so many storms, and held it tight. Their wedding was simple but full of warmth. No fancy dress, no extravagant cars, just a small ceremony at a cozy restaurant, surrounded by loved ones. Emily's elderly mother wept with joy throughout. Emily wore a simple white dress and walked down the aisle holding her children's hands. Daniel stood waiting at the end, his eyes glowing like summer sunlight. When the minister asked, "Do you promise to love, honor, and care for her, in sickness and in health?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "I do." And when it was Emily's turn, "Do you promise to share the rest of your life with him, through all joys and sorrows?" She looked at Daniel, then at her children watching with wide eyes, her heart overflowing with happiness. "I do." Applause rang out like a symphony, celebrating a beautiful turning point in her life. After the wedding, Daniel's mother welcomed Emily and her children as family. She often joked, "Now I have a daughter and 2 adorable grandchildren, triple the joy." Emily felt warmth, something she had once thought she'd never have again. A true home, not by luck, but because she had the courage to move past pain and believe in tomorrow. One evening, after dinner, Emily sat by the window, hugging her children. Outside, the moon was bright and the breeze rustled through the trees. Her little daughter whispered, "Mum, I really like Uncle Daniel. He tells the funniest stories." Emily smiled and kissed her daughter's forehead. "Yes, now we have someone else who loves us too." She looked up at the sparkling stars and silently whispered, "Thank you, Dad. Thank you, life. And thank you, me, for never giving up even when everything seemed to fall apart." And in that quiet moment, Emily finally understood, true happiness isn't about never being hurt. It's about daring to stand up again and love one more time.